Mazel tov again to the amazing families with their simchas. Typically, at our shul, our custom, our minhag, is to do a Torah study on Shabbat. But from time to time, it's Rabbi Devar Torah time, Rabbi sermon time. And I wish I could say I'm offering this sermon teaching in better times. But I do feel like this Torah portion, like these amazing bar mitzvah, wedding couple who give us inspiration and make us feel blessed and feel their blessing. And there's the priestly blessing in this Torah portion. Look, we need some blessing here because this is an incredibly difficult time for the Jewish people. And so I'm going to talk about the priestly blessing mainly at the end and see it not only as a text that gives us hope and inspiration, please God, but even a particular incident around the priestly blessing, a parchment of the priestly blessing being found in Jerusalem, and its story, which I'm going to share to you, that I believe can give us some inspiration. But let's just review for a second here. We have been through 3 specific incidents in the past 6, 8, 9 weeks that are almost indescribable in their pain and their in horror. It began with the governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, and Passover night, a terrorist goes to the governor's mansion while he and his family and friends are celebrating the Passover Pesach Seder and uses fire to try to kill him and his family. Then more recently, horrifically, in Washington, 2 young people involved in Jewish community leadership, one a young woman from Kansas City, Missouri, involved in her Reform synagogue in Kansas City. Her boyfriend, apparently they were near engagement, supposedly according to what we heard this week. And it's so horrible, but it's touching because Jonah Kaplan, who is a member of our shul, many of you know Jonah and Grace. Jonah was the one who interviewed Sarah Milgram's parents this past week. I don't know if you saw it on CBS News. Actually, Steve pointed out to me, and I watched it. Jonah Kaplan was a member of our shul, and at the local TV station affiliate ABC here, interviewed her parents this week and spoke of how the father was so incredibly painful and moving, how he said, I have to be strong because my daughter was so brave and strong. She was working with Yaron, not only on working for the Israeli embassy, but they actually were at an event dealing with how to bring humanitarian aid into Gaza and other places around the world. It was focused on actual peace work, and this terrorist killed them. And then, of course, sadly, just this week-ish, in Boulder, Colorado, a group of Jews who would go weekly, focusing primarily on return of hostages, not really per se on anything other than the hostage return safely. They were Molotov cocktail firebomb attacked by another terrorist, including a Holocaust survivor, apparently is still in the hospital, who is part of the group. Now, what I want to particularly point out, which really spurred me to give this teaching, is that the rabbi in Colorado, there are a couple of rabbis in Boulder, Colorado, obviously, but there's a conservative rabbi in Boulder, Colorado, who I know, Mark Soloway, an incredible, like an old friend. And when I got deeper in the details, this was written in the New York Times, and he revealed it through his own social media posts. He had written 3 specific letters to the local city council of Boulder. Why? Because the Boulder City Council was getting pressure, just like what happened here in Raleigh, North Carolina, to pass all kinds of resolutions related to the Gaza situation. I'm sure everyone here is local, knows what I'm talking about. And the rhetoric was so heated and like a rhetoric of violence and incitement, not just pro-peace, you might say, but pro-Hamas, celebrating terrorism, that this rabbi, who I know, who is very much a peace-oriented rabbi, okay, this is Boulder, Colorado, okay, all right, but he said, I'm at these events, my congregants are scared. They're being pointed to, spoken to with threats of violence. You, city council, need to not only not deal with this resolution, but you need to speak clearly against this type of rhetoric and incitement. And he felt they did not, and he directly connected the culture or the atmosphere of incitement in the Boulder kind of town with this violence. He saw a direct connection, which really reminds us, sadly, of the book of Proverbs says that death in life is in the power of the tongue, and that what first starts with language, sadly, we know this in the Jewish community more than any other community perhaps, okay? It ends up with actual violence in the street. Violence of the tongue leads to violence in the street. And so it really speaks so clearly, and I am so troubled because our city council has turned over and we have amazing local representation. However, there still continues to be one member of the city council who continues in her social media posts to put things forward in the weeks when the Jewish community is in the most suffering, concerned. Our security is strong. We are resilient, but it's strong. It's higher alert than ever. And she continues to post incendiary posts on her personal website and on her kind of a public social media. It concerns me even here. Now, on the other hand, I just want to really make sure everyone knows, I'm so touched, and I know that my wife, Rabbi Jenny, too, we've been continued to be contacted by numerous local clergy, friends, people outside of the Jewish community locally who continue to reach out to us to offer their support. I specifically was very touched by Congresswoman Ross, who we played phone tag this week, but she contacted me. We played back and forth. She's in Washington, obviously, for votes, but she's not only expressed her deepest concern, and she has actually spoken from our pulpit before about anti-Semitism, but she was speaking specifically that in the current big bill, she is working to make sure that security for synagogues continues to be put as a kind of a line item, and that is not, God forbid, cut from this. By the way, not just for synagogues, really for all houses of worship, but a specific focus on the Jewish community given the current crisis we're facing. So I want to be clear, the culture is not only one of incitement, it's also one of love, but there's a lot going on out there in the context. And so I want to kind of wrap on this statement. This is a difficult time. This is a time where words have led to violence. We must, in the Jewish community and our allies, which I consider all of you here to be, continue to speak up and be proud. We must double down and do our Jewish rituals and community and our practices more than ever. This is not a time to put away the Jewish star. It's a time to put out the Jewish star. Okay, we cannot let terrorists determine our Jewish practices. That's not how it's going to be, okay? But we also have to remember that the source of who we are and what we're about is to be a blessing, like the priestly blessing says, to each other and to the world. That is the goal, to bring the blessing of God's face to everyone. And then this story I will close. I was reminded of this week by Rabbi David Wolpe, who told this beautifully, but I had heard it once before in Israel. I feel so blessed that I've gone on many trips to Israel, and so have Jenny, with a lot of you people that have been here, okay? And a lot of you have already been to Israel. But you may know this specific place in Jerusalem. In Jerusalem, of course, there's the Old City, which is like the most ancient part. But right outside the walls, there's a valley called Gai in Hebrew means a valley, Chinom. And in Yiddish, someone may know, it's been turned into Gehenna. Gehenna, the place of Hinnom. Gehenna, the valley of Hinnom. It's considered in the Jewish tradition hell. We don't really have a hell, so we're saying, but that's what it's called. Why? Because prior to the Jewish community being in Jerusalem, there was a community or a king called Molech. It was kind of an idolatrous community, and they used to do child sacrifice outside of Jerusalem. This is before the Jewish people were in Israel, okay? In this particular valley. And they know this, sadly, through archaeological digs. They found children and their bones, etc., in that valley. So that valley outside Jerusalem is very ancient, and that's why it's called hell in the Jewish community tradition, because it's a place where things that hellacious happened there, in our view, okay? But in that spot, Israeli archaeologists found the oldest piece of tradition from 6 centuries before zero, 600 years before zero. We're in 2000, whatever you are, so it's 2,600 years ago, okay? One small text, and it was the priestly blessing. May God bless you and keep you. May God's face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May God look upon you and grant you peace. In the place of child sacrifice, we put the priestly blessing. And as Rabbi Wolpe said, in the gates of hell, the Jewish community finds blessing. That is our message, okay? We must not only pray the priestly blessing, we must live the priestly blessing. This is a time for our community to be even more kind, to be even more loving of one's neighbor, to demonstrate that not only would terrorists not stop us from being Jewish, but they'll not stop us from being a blessing. These wonderful families, all of you, we will, with God's help, we will send so much blessing into a world with so much challenge. We can do it together. Amen, amen. Shabbat shalom u'mvorach. With that, we rise